Cold calling scripts, outsourcing templates for modern lead generation. Cold calling in 2025, harder, not dead. Cold calling is tougher than most teams want to admit, and the numbers prove it. In 2025, the average cold calling success rate is roughly 2.3%, down from 4.82% in 2024, which means winging it is basically a budget line item for disappointment. The upside is that the channel still creates pipeline for teams willing to modernize their scripts, targeting, and coaching. We see the same pattern across outsourced sales team engagements. When messaging and qualification are documented, callers can consistently convert attention into booked next steps. When they aren't, outsourcing simply scales the same weak conversation across more dials. In other words, sales outsourcing doesn't fix strategy, it amplifies it. This is why script can't mean a word-for-word monologue anymore. In modern B2B cold calling, a script is a flexible framework that protects your brand, gives reps a repeatable path to a qualified meeting, and creates something you can measure, coach, and improve over time. Why scripts still matter, and why most fail. Despite all the noise about new channels, cold calling is still a primary technique for a lot of revenue teams. About 72% of B2B sales organizations continue to rely on it. The issue isn't that prospects never answer, it's that most teams run calls with generic positioning, unclear outcomes, and inconsistent delivery. That's exactly where a strong script framework becomes a competitive advantage. Benchmarks make the gap clear. Typical B2B programs often land around a 5% call-to-meeting conversion, while top performers reach 10 to 15% when they pair tight ICP targeting with refined talk tracks. At the same time, many SDR teams only connect live on 3 to 10% of dials, so every real conversation has to be maximally relevant. When you outsource sales, those few connects are too expensive to waste. A big reason performance stays mediocre is that having scripts isn't the same as having effective scripts. About 45% of cold calls use a script, yet only 24% of those scripts are considered effective, and 73% of cold call failures are tied to poor preparation. If your cold calling agency or SDR agency is dialing with bad assumptions, weak context, or unclear next steps, you're paying to generate rejection at scale. What outsourcing changes? Clarity beats charisma. With an in-house SDR pod, a lot of performance comes from tribal knowledge. They overhear pitches, ask questions in Slack, and slowly learn what good sounds like. With an outsourced sales team, you don't have that ambient learning, so your call framework must include the context your internal team takes for granted. That means persona assumptions, value propositions by role, proof points, and what good sounds like in your brand voice. Qualification is where outsourced programs most often go wrong, not because reps are incapable, but because the client never defined the finish line. If the provider doesn't know what a qualified meeting requires, you get calendar volume that AEs won't respect. Strong cold calling services document qualification criteria, persona, pains, current workflow, timing, and disqualifiers, and build those checkpoints directly into the questions and transitions. Finally, scripts have to map to your systems so you can measure what's working. CRM usage is associated with a 37% increase in cold calling success, largely because teams can track outcomes by segment and talk track instead of relying on opinions. If you're evaluating cold calling companies, treat clean CRM integration, dispositions, recordings, and reporting by script version as a non-negotiable requirement, not a nice-to-have. An outsourcing-ready script framework built for real conversations. Start by designing scripts as modular talk tracks: pre-call check, opener, relevance statement, discovery questions, proof, call to action, and objection handling. This matters because connect rates are thin, and many teams need persistent volume to get enough live conversations to produce meetings. When your modules are clear, you can train faster, coach consistently, and swap components without rewriting everything. Pre-call prep should be lightweight but mandatory, because poor preparation drives the majority of failures. For outsourced SDRs, we recommend a repeatable 20 to 30 second checklist. Confirm role and seniority, sanity check company size and industry fit, and note one context cue if available: hiring, tech stack hints, recent change. This keeps callers from sounding generic while still supporting high dial volume. From there, focus your opener on permission and clarity, not cleverness. A simple pattern: who you are, why you're calling, and a quick permission-based question travels well across regions and rep styles. Then, move immediately into a persona-specific relevance statement that proves you understand their world, because scripts that sound like marketing copy lose the room in the first 10 seconds. Treat your script like guardrails. It should keep the conversation on the road, not lock your reps into reading a paragraph. Design for next steps, not product pitches. The goal of a cold call isn't to explain your platform, it's to earn a qualified next step. Great B2B cold calling scripts are optimized around a single conversion, a 15 to 30-minute discovery or demo with clear qualification gates, not a feature tour. This is especially important in pay-per-appointment lead generation models, where the wrong incentives can drift toward any meeting unless the criteria are explicit. Objection handling needs to be a first-class part of the framework, not an appendix. Map the top 5 to 7 objections you hear: already have a vendor, no budget, send info, not a priority, and write short, conversational responses, plus one follow-up question that steers back to qualification. When your outsourced callers can handle objections naturally, you protect both conversion rate and brand perception. One-size-fits-all scripts quietly kill ROI, so build variants by ICP segment and persona. A VP of sales at mid-market SaaS, an IT director in healthcare, and a CFO in manufacturing don't need different wordsmithing, they need different assumptions, proof points, and discovery questions. For any outbound sales agency, including SalesHive, this segmentation is where call scripts stop being generic telemarketing and start feeling like relevant business conversations. Common failure points and how to fix them fast. The fastest way to sabotage outsourced sales is handing a provider a single generic script and asking them to book meetings. Relevance drops, rejection rises, and you burn through your best accounts without learning anything. If your messaging isn't tailored, you'll feel it immediately in the dial-to-meeting math, especially when the average dial-to-meeting performance sits around 2.3% in many benchmarks. Another costly mistake is writing long, word-for-word monologues and then enforcing rigid compliance. It makes cold callers sound robotic, reduces their ability to adapt, and forces awkward transitions when prospects interrupt, which they always do. The fix is to train intent and flow, what each module is trying to accomplish, then let reps personalize within guardrails while still staying on script structurally. Finally, teams often avoid metrics and recordings, so script debates become opinion wars instead of performance decisions. When leads can cost around $300 on average, you need a QA loop that protects your spend and your brand. Set a regular review cadence with your sales development agency or SDR agency's partner. Listen to real calls and tie changes to outcomes by script version and segment. How to measure and optimize outsourced calling performance. A modern cold calling team should be managed like a measurable funnel, not a vibe. Track dials, live connects, conversations, meetings booked, meetings held, and downstream pipeline by campaign and script version. This is where strong process separates best cold calling services from more activity vendors. Use clear targets as a starting point, then adjust based on your list quality and market. Many teams see 3 to 10% live connect rates, while well-run programs push meeting conversion into the 10 to 15% range when ICP and talk tracks are tight. If you're consistently below mid-single-digit conversion on good data, assume you have a relevance, qualification, or coaching problem, not a cold calling is dead problem. AI, tooling, and the next iteration of script design. Tooling isn't optional anymore. It's how you turn call volume into learning. AI-powered systems are reported to drive about 35% higher connection rates, and that increased access only matters if your first 30 seconds are strong and your next step is clear. If you're hiring a cold calling agency, ask how they use call recording, transcription, and coaching workflows, not just how many dials they can make. The best teams treat scripts as living assets with a short shelf life. Instead of quarterly rewrites, run small A/B tests every couple of weeks. Opener variants, a different proof point, a tighter qualification question, or a clearer CTA. Your goal is controlled change so you can attribute lifts to specific edits, not chaotic rewrites that reset learning. At SalesHive, we approach this like a performance system across channels, because calls don't exist in a vacuum. When cold email agency messaging, LinkedIn outreach services, and calling talk tracks share the same ICP assumptions and proof points, the buyer experience becomes consistent and conversions improve. That's the real advantage of treating your outbound motion as an integrated B2B sales agency playbook rather than a set of disconnected scripts.